Welcome back. In our last Lightning Web Components explainer, we talked all about how parents pass data down to their children. Well, today, we're going to flip that script entirely. We are going to master how a child component sends a signal and data right back up to its parent. All right, let's dive right in.
So we know it's super easy for a parent component to push data down to a child. You just use the @API decorator and boom, you're done. It's a one-way street. But what happens when the child needs to talk back? What if a user clicks a button or picks an option from a list inside that child component and the parent needs to know about it? That's the puzzle we're going to solve right now.
And this slide really lays it all out for us. Data flowing down, that's our old friend, the @API decorator. Easy enough. But for data to flow up from the child to the parent, we need a whole different tool from our toolbox: custom events. This is the official, standard way for a child component to basically raise its hand and shout, "Hey, something important just happened down here."
Okay, so let's break this down. First up, we've got to look at the component that needs to do the talking, the child. I want you to think of the child's job as sending up a flare. It has to create the signal, and then it has to fire it off so the parent can't miss it. And it really just boils down to two simple steps. First, the child has to create the event. This is kind of like writing a message and sealing it in an envelope. Second, it has to dispatch that event, which is the act of actually putting it in the mail. Create it, then send it. Simple as that.
So what exactly is this custom event we keep talking about? Well, under the hood, it's just a standard JavaScript object, nothing too scary. But the real magic, the part you absolutely need to remember, is this detail property. The detail property is your payload. It's the package that carries whatever data you want to send up to the parent. It's the whole reason we're doing this.
All right, let's look at the actual code. We're creating a new custom event, and the first thing we do is give it a name. Here, we're calling it Notify. Now, that name is super important because it's how the parent is going to know what to listen for. Then, inside that second argument, we have our detail property, which holds our message.
Okay, so we've built our event, we've put our message inside it. Now what? We have to send it, and that's what this .dispatch event does. Think of this line as lighting the fuse and sending that flare up into the sky. It takes our event object and just fires it out, making it available for any parent who's listening. The signal is officially on its way.
All right, the child has sent the signals, so now we've got to switch hats and think like the parent. How does the parent component see that flare, catch it, and actually read the message inside?
And you'll see it's a perfect mirror image of what the child did. The parent also has a two-step job. First, it has to be actively listening for that specific event. And second, once it hears it, it needs to run a function to handle the data that came along for the ride. Listen, then handle. It's that simple. So where does this listening happen? It happens right in the parent's HTML template, right on the tag for the child component. You add an attribute that follows a really simple pattern, the word on followed by the event name. Remember how we called our event Notify? Well, the listener is on Notify. See how that works? We then tell it what to do when it hears that event by pointing it to a handler function. And here's the payoff. This is the handler function back in the parent's JavaScript. It automatically gets that event object the child sent up. And to get our data, our message, we just access it through event.detail. So a line like this one pulls that original string right out of the event and assigns it to a property in the parent. Mission accomplished.
Now, sending a fixed message is cool for understanding the concept, but let's be real, that's kind of like learning to drive in an empty parking lot. The real fun starts when we get on the road and start sending dynamic data based on what the user is actually doing.
Think about it. The child component has an input field, right? The user types something in. Instead of sending that same old boring "hello from child" message every time, we can grab exactly what they typed and send that specific piece of information up the chain. This is how you make your components truly interactive. And you're going to love how simple the code changes for this. Seriously, in the child component, where we were hard coding that message string before, we just replace it with a variable from our component, like this.userMessage. That's it. As long as that variable is kept up to date with what's in the input field, our event will always carry the latest, freshest data from the user.
Okay, but what if the component that needs the information isn't the direct parent? What if it's a grandparent or even higher up the family tree? By default, these events stop at the parent's front door. To get past that, we use something called event bubbling.
By adding bubbles, true, and composed true to our event's setup, we're basically telling it, hey, don't stop at the first house. Keep on traveling up until someone catches you.
And this slide shows it perfectly. Look at that. The child at the very bottom fires its event with bubbling turned on, and whoosh, it travels right past the immediate parent and can be caught by the grandparent component instead. This is so useful when you're building complex apps with lots of nested components. So now that we know how to wire all this up, let's quickly go over a few rules for the road. Following these best practices will keep your code clean, make it way easier to read, and honestly, save you a lot of headaches down the line. First up, use meaningful event names. Something like onSelect tells you exactly what happened without even looking at the code. Next, try to keep communication one way, from child to parent, to avoid confusing spaghetti-like data flows. Super important. Always use event.detail to pass your data. It's the standard for a reason. And finally, only turn on bubbling when you really need it. Otherwise, you risk other components accidentally catching your event. And there you have it. That's the whole story. You now have the complete toolkit for data communication in LWC. You can send data down with @API, and you can send it right back up with custom events. You have full control. The only question left is, now that you can make your components talk to each other in any direction, what amazing things are you going to build?